So is there anything that any of the panelists want to ask or say to one another?
Well, I would like to reiterate my story of being, the contingent that I was marching with was 6th of 7. So we were way towards the end of the march. And it meant that we were standing in place for hours, waiting as the people in the front started to move. So there was a lot of dancing and singing, and there was all kinds of activity around. And all of a sudden, I looked over all these people, and I could see the New Pioneers logo going round and round. What is this? What is this? And I finally realized that it had to be Alita. And it was really wonderful in the middle of 400,000 people to see that logo right there in the middle of things.
I'm glad you were there to see it.
Did anyone ask you about the organization?
A little Chinese Buddhist pointed to it and said, "Is that about the family?" And I said, "Oh, yes, it is, but it's also the atmosphere, the farm, the streams, you know, it's everything, you know." And then I saw some African-American black ladies looking at it because all the figures of the family are in black, you know, and they kind of smiled at it, you know, and I thought, well, it's saying a lot more than I ever planned for it to say.
I know for my family, as I mentioned, that I've never done any kind of political activism knowingly, and my father, I was saying this a little earlier before we started, my father said, you know, "So are you going to that protest? I hear you're going to that protest." And I said, "Well, Dad, it's not a protest. It's a march. It's a demonstration of solidarity to the idea that we as an entire planet are connected to the Earth maintaining its robustness. So, you know, regardless of what side of the argument you're on, I mean, we're all connected." And I know my father is not very supportive of the idea of climate change, and I respect my father very much, so I have to respect that perspective. And I very gently gave him a few websites. My dad is an engineer, and one of the websites is the American Physicists of America, or something to that degree. And one is the Geophysicists. Very, you know, my dad is a very, you know, very down-to-earth thinker and pragmatist, so how could he not enjoy some of this information? And both of these groups have made 1-page or 2-page declarations and statements, PR statements, regarding their acceptance of climate change. And wouldn't you know, my father, who absolutely, we have butted heads many times over the years, he said, "Well, I would have to admit, what you sent me and what you're doing in New York, I'm going to have to look at this information a little more closely than I had before." And that was the face I made. Of course, we were on the phone, so he didn't get to see my expression, but I thought, well, okay, maybe the one thing, at least for my family, that's going to come out of me choosing to go to this thing is that my dad will just kind of look at the material and not have it be a divisive issue, but have it be something that we can discuss intelligently as a family. So that's my little added story.
Well, let's invite our audience to share your perceptions and comments, questions, observations, anything you would like to share with the panel, or ask the panel, or give as feedback to the panel.
I'd like to ask, I was very impressed with all of your talks, and excited that you're so excited and that you can get the world excited. Were there speeches given along the way? Did people get up and give speeches, or this just was plain walking?
There was just walking. There are several places where we turned a corner. They had cameras. They had a big screen that you could see people walking. But no, there weren't any speeches that I was aware of. We were on 68th Street, and we were among the school children, and because Sister Barbara Kane was also with us, and she's the principal of a school. And it took us an hour before we moved, and so I heard it was about 2 hours for you behind us, because that was only halfway. But what I really liked was, as I started listening to what people were chanting, they were saying, climate justice. What do we want? Climate justice. And that really moved me, because that's, just talk about climate change, but we want justice for our climate. That's the moving thing.
I believe that, Joyce, wasn't it so that the organizers didn't want to have speeches, they didn't want that kind of rhetoric or hierarchy? Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's. I think it was by design that there were not speeches within the context of the march itself. The day before, there were a number of different kinds of gatherings, speeches, panels, all kinds of dialogue, and right afterwards, the next day, there were other actions. But there was a real definite decision to not try to highlight individuals during this march. It was
the secretary?
I believe,
yeah,
yes.
he led the march. He was in the front line. Ban Ki-moon.
Yes, he was there, and Al Gore. They came on. Yeah.
But that was, the thing was that really people who had big names all marched. They didn't
Just like
speak,
everybody
they
else.
marched. Yeah.
And I think also the spirit, it made it very profound, because each group, especially, they say something and the whole group say it together. So it continually have some chanting and something, for example, like Sister Terry say about climate justice, or also they say about how or what the democracy is, and all the whole group say it. So you continually hear the proclamation, I have to tell, and the sound and the laugh and the energy from the group. It's very loud, very cheerful.
And weren't you organized according to groups? Like there was a group of what? Educators, a group of healthcare, a
The
group of
UAW was there.
unions, and then there was a huge interfaith group, right?
Yes.
Where all the religions of the world were represented.
That's right.
So it was organized in one sense, but not hierarchically.
We
at all.
marched, I marched with James Spraggins and one of his friends from University of Kentucky, and we marched just behind, or just in front of rather, the physicians in healthcare. So there was a whole, they all had their lab coats on, there were nurses, doctors, some people had stethoscopes just to say, hey, we are, but it was a pretty huge contingent of healthcare, so that they were part of the next block. So there was just tons of different groups that were all congregated together. They wanted them to be together so that you could see there were so many different kinds of people and professions that are standing up for the climate.
Did they have a farmers group?
I saw people just like in the group I was in, with signs, young men, with signs on saying "Save our farms" and things like that. And then at the side of the street, among the spectators, there was a big picture of someone had drawn a big cow. It was like save the farms too. But yeah.
I saw food workers union. So busboys, waiters, waitresses that were but that doesn't answer the farm thing.
Yeah, I think one group may be the farm. I'm not sure, but they have each banner is the image of one animal. Yeah, very different. For example, elephant, bear, different kind of animal around the world. They hang it with that. it's very profound to see that.
Sure.
Yeah.
I just want to contribute something. Ellie, sorry, I don't remember the names.
Alida.
Oh, when you asked the question, you were always wondering what happens when a bomb
Yeah.
explodes, like whatever the issues where the bombs explode. It makes me think about that question too, and I was thinking that not just to the atmosphere, but first people die and
Yeah.
people lose life, and there's no way to explain that. But also when it's come to the environment issues, you have these greenhouse gases whereby they lead to global warming and things like that. And maybe that's why people don't like to fight at home. They don't want to bring war at home. We think maybe we don't want those kind of effect to be on our side. But what we forget is that what we just mentioned right now, that our lives are connected. We forget that what happens somewhere also affects us in one way or another. I know that people cut down trees in Central Africa, but that affects the amount of rainfall that countries in Central America receive. So in one way or another, I mean, it all affects us because at the end of the day, it's one health. So it's just that I was thinking of the question.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a very good point.
The few clips that I saw on TV, I was very impressed with, besides the enormity of the group, I didn't realize there would be that many people, it was the civility, the way people acted. They cared for each other, and there was no pushing and shoving, and you saw that on TV, and even the commentators mentioned that. But it was very impressive.
Were there protesters along the way?
Not
I
at
didn't
all.
see
I
it.
didn't
I
see
don't see
any.
any.
Shown on TV, so.
No.
Fantastic.
I did see someone who had a megaphone who didn't seem very mentally tapped down, so to speak. That was the only element in the whole entire thing, and he was not in the march. He was outside of the march, so he was using it as kind of an opportunity. But he was very polite. He just was a little... But that's the only thing I saw in the 4 hours of being involved that had any... And he was perfectly nice as well. I mean, he wasn't disrespectful or anything.
They're very impressive.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that really was what I was just in shock at how, I mean, I told you, it
People
said,
can act when they
yeah, it was civilized. It just was very civilized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When the organizers had hoped they would get 100,000 people, that was their hope. So the fact that 4 times 100,000 showed up says a whole lot about where the people really are, where we stand. Because for every one who was able to go, there's another 100 who wish they could and didn't. So it's a very significant statement from the whole human species.
What do you all feel will come out of the whole process? Did you get any glimpse or any indication of where the direction would be next? What would be what comes next, basically?
Several things. Besides the march in New York, there were 168 other demonstrations throughout the world. I know London had 40,000 people. And on the Tuesday at the United Nations, when President Obama was speaking, he said, the people are marching. The people are telling us we have to do something. We have to. And I think what gives me hope is knowing that it's not like what's going to happen tomorrow, but knowing that what Ban Ki-moon said is Paris 2015, we want to see what you've done because of all of this. So I have hope, just like I have belief in God, that God's going to guide all of this.
If we could make it a black or white issue, 400,000 people voted, it would make a difference.
It's very much so, yes.
The organizers are continuing. There's what is coming up now?
The movement has largely been led by a group called Rainforest Action Network, I think, RAN. And they just announced a series of workshops in major cities around the U.S. to bring together groups of people who will look together at, okay, now what? What are the next right steps? And one of those groups is going to be in Louisville, Kentucky. It's the weekend of October 18th and 19th. It's at the First Unitarian Church downtown in Louisville. And some of us are going, hopefully a good number of us will go. And the idea is together those local groups will chart a course for what are we going to do here in our state or in our region. So there's a lot of momentum, and there needs to be a lot of momentum. I heard Kenny Ausubel speak in May at the Festival of Faiths in Louisville. Kenny Ausubel and his wife founded an organization called Bioneers about 35 years ago. Wonderful national organization working on all kinds of ecological issues. And Kenny said at that time that he and all the other wise people that he talks to say that we have 5 to 6 years to make the shift from fossil fuel to renewable energy. Now, New Pioneers has been here for 10 years, and we know how hard it's been to see change happen. So 5 or 6 years is next to nothing. Now, I don't mean that we have to complete the process, but we have to make policy decisions in all nations around the world that we're getting off of fossil fuels and onto renewable fuels. In 5 to 6 years, those decisions need to be made. So we have to work, and we have to work right now, and we have to work pretty fast to influence the leadership, the elected leadership of our cities, our counties. I mean, because we have to start locally. It's not going to happen. Like you said, if Maizung said, if I had stayed home because I wouldn't make a difference, the other 500,000 people could have said the same thing. Well, if local counties don't start to change, nothing's going to change in the state, and then nothing's going to change in the nation. So we need to get started, and we need to get started now. And the first step, as one of you said, is education. It was Alita, I think, that we have to learn what is this. Most of us don't even begin to understand what this whole climate change thing really means. If you had to explain it to somebody else, would you know confidently how to explain what the problem is and what can be done about it? I didn't a year ago. I mean, our board has really worked to study and to learn together what this issue is all about and what are the places where hope exists. I believe there is hope, but it's a very, very, very serious situation that we're in. And most of our population is asleep at the wheel. Most of our people are going about their lives either paying no attention at all or acting like they're paying no attention at all because it's so frightening, as Joyce said, that we don't want to have to face it, and we think if we block it out, if we don't watch the news, if we don't read the newspaper, then we won't have to worry about it, which is really not the best approach to fearful things.
I think another group to really keep track of in terms of next steps is 350.org. It's a group that really has been stimulating a lot of this work all around the country and around the world. And they have very definite kinds of next steps, next actions in different places, and you can follow them online. Bill McKibben is the leader of that. It's the man really who's initiated the work of that group. And he's quite a remarkable guy, really.
And they took their name, 350, because that was the parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere at the time they started, which wasn't very long ago. It's 400 now, just under 400. And I like what you taught. You sent me the email about this Rainforest Action Network meeting, because they're taking it from the idea of the temperature of the Earth. Their workshop is how to keep it under 2 degrees. In 1975, the temperature of the Earth was about 0. 1900, it was below 0. And right now, we're about 1.5 degrees. Not quite 1.5. But if we keep on doing it's what you say, how close it is. If we could, you can find this on 350.org. If we continue with using fossil fuels like we have now, we're going to reach 2 degrees in 11 years. And that's overheated. When it reaches 4 degrees, which is going to go very fast by 2050, Earth is inhabitable. So you're right. It's very urgent to start doing things. But I think there's a will with the people if they could only understand. And some people, I sat at a table with a woman the other day, and she said, I don't believe in climate change. And you still hear this. You're just making this up. Because the Earth has always changed over millenniums. You know, I lived in Africa, and the Sahara Desert used to be a forest. But that took billions of years to do. And what we're doing in 25 years. So that's the difference. And I loved it when they said, it's not that, it's the Industrial Revolution when we started really doing a lot of combustion of fossil fuels, but we didn't know. It's not that we did it on purpose. We didn't know. So there's no blame game there. It's simply, now we know, so let's do something different.
We didn't have the people back then either. We didn't have the population, or the world population that we have today. So we can change things very, very fast today. Well, you mentioned starting locally. We could start by everybody. We got an election coming up very closely here.
That's right.
We got a right to vote. Everybody needs to vote.
I went to Nuns on the Bus.
Please.
I went to Louisville for Nuns on the Bus when they're going around telling people, let's get the vote out.
Exactly.
We got to get people to vote. They're not telling people how to vote, but let's get the voters out. You know, get them to come. Most people say, wouldn't make any difference. It's like Mayong said, mine's not going to make any difference. Everyone makes a difference.
Yeah, it will make a difference.
One woman spoke. She's a politician in Louisville, and she said, she's been in elected office for 20 years. And she said, but my first year I was elected by 10 votes. Yeah. So she said, you get 9 people out to go with you to vote. It was good.
And we need to locally ask the candidates for these positions, what's your stand on the issue of climate change? What would you do locally to begin to take some action, to take some leadership? And if you're not satisfied with their answer, maybe you don't want to vote for them. I'm not saying single issue voting, but at least it should be one of the factors that is processed. Because too often people vote on another single issue, which is the right to life question, and they don't look at any of the other issues. This is a right to life issue, a big right to life issue. Nobody will be able to live here if we don't solve this one. I don't want to leave us, though. I mean, this is all very serious and can be very frightening. There is enormous good news going on with the transition to renewable energy. There's a lot of change going on quietly under the surface, where many more jobs, like 10 times more jobs were created in the field of solar energy last year than in any other field of work. The number of watts of electricity being produced now by solar energy it's like 17 times more than they had hoped 10 years ago. And we're heading toward 55 times more next year. So there's a lot of good going on, but it will only continue to go on if we put the pressure on our elected leaders and let them know that the people will not sit still and let things be destroyed because some industries have profit as their primary motive. So the people have to get involved. We have to get educated. An excellent book, if anybody in our audience is interested in learning more about this issue, is written by a Louisvillian. His name is Sam Avery, and the name of the book is a little bit strange, The Pipeline and the Paradigm. It's easily available, and it's only like $12 or $15 in paperback. But it's a very readable, easy book to understand, and it explains the issues in very powerful ways. So we're looking at the possibility of starting a study group with people who are interested in probably using that book and reading a few chapters and coming together and discussing. If anybody in our audience here or in our TV audience is interested in doing that, please call our office. The number is 859-336-5070, or email us at newpioneerssf@aol.com. So we only have a couple more minutes to finish up. We have time for one or possibly two more comments or questions. Anybody else like to say anything that hasn't been said yet?
I really appreciate you all going. I don't believe I could have walked 80 blocks, but I'm glad we had a contingent there from Washington again.
So I'm sorry I came in late and missed everything except for the Q&A, which I also appreciated. But did you all say, did you all talk a little bit about the youth contingent that was at the march?
A lot of people brought it up. There are a lot of children, a lot of kids.
Well,
A lot of kids with their families, kids with their schools, kids from high school,
Wow.
college students. I mean, there was just so many young people.
Yeah.
I have with the group, I think 4 or 5 children. I think they are in the kindergarten.
Yeah, they were really small.
Kindergarten with the teacher on the group and with the banner. It's so adorable. 2 or 3, yeah.
Yeah, that brings it home.
I think they were from the United Nations International School. They were right next to us there
Yeah,
with
very
the
close,
one. They were pretty powerful. And yeah.
I was actually surprised at how many young people there were there. And there were some really little kids where you
Little
thought,
kids,
oh my gosh, that's a lot to ask. And they just made it fun, and they were just there. I'm sure there were some that melted down, but in general, I mean, everybody kept on going.
Taken out of the
That's right, that's right.
I think it was the first time in my life it took me 2.5 hours to walk 2 miles. It was 2.5 hours we were walking. I don't know about you.
4 hours.
There were so
Because
many people.
Yeah, there were so many people. And you would walk for a while and you'd be with a different group, and then you'd be with a different group. You never, at least we were never with the same group. We were a different group there for a while.
If you didn't know what the march was for, and you just looked at the people, and you had your TV on and it was turned off and there was no People's Climate March, if you didn't know what it was and you just saw the people, you would have no idea what they were marching. That was so cool. Did you all find that too, that there was just so many different kinds of people that...
I mentioned during my presentation or afterwards that the day before the march there were a number of different gatherings of caucuses and meetings and presentations, and I went to one of those, and it was a huge group. I bet, well, huge, 800 probably in a church, in a large church. And Bill McKibben was on the panel with a number of other people. And in that audience, I would bet you 75% were young adults. They were people in their 20s and 30s, right there, full of questions. It was really inspiring and knowledgeable. I mean, these young people really knew what the stakes were, and they were there.
And if you look at the banner, there are so many different. Each banner have a different message.
Yeah, sure.
So I keep, run from one place to another place, keep taking the pictures, because it's so meaningful to see the different ideas, different reactive. They not only the banner, but the way they react. The banner is so powerful, and the children, with every place, it's magnificent, and I think that the only thing is it has to be there and feel the spirit over there. It's very powerful. Yeah.
They had sunflowers as a kind of a symbol that many, many, many people carried. And I learned that sunflowers draw out the mercury and different
And lead, yeah.
lead from the soil, and so they're purifying the earth, and so it was a very fitting symbol to be seen.
I think everyone would have been, everyone, I would hope. But I know you would have been proud. I think everyone in this audience, it was pretty inspiring. I mean, inspiring is sort of a lighter word, right? I mean, there was just, it was very deep.
And also when you, at the end, they have the tree that we can hang it, the message from the people who cannot come. But once they leave the message to the marcher who come, to hang their message to the tree around. It's like thousands of people, thousands of messages will hang it over there.
That was a concurrent organization that was called climateribbon.org. And people were encouraged to bring a 24-inch ribbon that somebody would write on what their hopes were, for what their dreams were. And people who were there would go, and they had a cardboard tree and lines coming off of it like wash lines. And you tied all those ribbons on, and they were going to be the ribbons for the roots of the tree that would bring about climate ribbons.
Talk about young people. I heard about a dorm where college kids were living, and it was very cold. And so they devised things like empty pop bottles and tin foil and whatever. I don't know exactly, I can't remember now, but they created little solar panels and they fixed them to the outside of their window, and something brought the warmth in, and they were able to live in relative comfort in their dorm rooms because of this invention that someone had. So, you know, it can start small.
And the human creativity is able to do wonders with it. Well, we can't thank you enough, panelists. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your going and your sharing, and we really appreciate all of those of you who came tonight, and we appreciate our audience who will be listening over these next weeks, we hope. And as I said earlier, anybody who's interested in becoming part of this effort, please contact New Pioneers, and we would love to have more companions on this wonderful journey. Thank you.